Hey friends, today we got to see all the brand new March of the Machines Commander pre-constructed decks. There are 5 in total, including one that we got to preview today, which I'm super stoked about. Each of these pre-constructed decks come with 10 brand new cards. So I'm going to go over the 4 decks that we didn't cover in the podcast today and look at the brand new cards in each of them. One of the cards, Ichor Wellspring, is printed in all the decks, so ignoring that, I think it's like 36 cards that this video is going to cover, which is a lot. But before we begin, 2 quick reminders. First, if you want to pre-order all these sweet new cards, you can head on over to our sponsor, cardkingdom.com/mtggoldfish, and be sure to ask for a scoop sticker in the order notes. And number 2, if you want to support the channel and you like this sort of content, then be sure to like and subscribe to never miss a preview video. Alright, let's jump into the cards with the first pre-constructed deck, led by Brightpalm Soul Awakener. This is a 4-mana Naya 4/3 legendary creature Fox Shaman with a new set mechanic called Backup. When this creature enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. If that's another creature, it gains the following ability until end of turn. And this ability is, whenever this creature attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on target creature. That creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less this turn. So Brightpalm always has this ability. However, when it enters the battlefield, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on any creature. And if that creature is another creature other than Brightpalm, it gets to have this ability, whenever this creature attacks ability, until end of turn. So ideally, you're going to be backing up another creature, so it gets a +1/+1 counter, and then when it attacks, you double the number of counter ons it, and it has a pseudo evasion until end of turn. Obviously, you want to be picking a creature that can ideally be attacking the exact turn that you do this, otherwise it's not very good. But this ability is very powerful. Doubling counters is very strong, and pseudo evasion is just a cherry on top, but it's going to make attacks that much more lethal. So the deck is basically a +1/+1 counter deck, and it's focused on doubling the amount of counters on stuff and scaling up with +1/+1 counters. So Colonial Hydra doubles the counters on everything. It's a very powerful reprint, and also a very expensive one. It was like $15 before this set was revealed. Gyre Sage scales up with the number of +1/+1 counters on it, and also Backup is an ETB trigger. So any way to blink all your stuff is going to reuse the Backup ability as well. And also Haste is going to be really important too, because Backup in general is focused on attack triggers. So most of the cards that we're going to be looking at, they don't really do much unless the creature they're backing up can immediately attack immediately afterwards. So those haste enablers are really, really good in this deck as well. So let's move on to the rest of the new cards. We got Deathgreeter Champion. It's a 3-mana red 2/1 human warrior creature with dash, which means you can either cast it for its regular cost and it enters the battlefield and has summoning sickness, or you can pay 4 mana to put it onto the battlefield. It has haste, and then at end step, you return it back to your hand. And it has Backup 1 and Double Strike. So it can enter the battlefield and get something Double Strike, or it could be dashed in, give itself maybe Double Strike and +1, and you deal 6 damage that way. It's flexible, it dodges sorcery speed removal. It's very nice. And we have the Backup Commander. This is the commander in the 99 that you can easily swap as a face commander of the deck as well. It's Shalai and Halar. This is a Naya 4-mana 3/3 legendary creature, Angel Elf. And it has flying, vigilance, and whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, Shalai and Halar deal that much damage to target opponent. So it turns the +1/+1 counter theme into damage directly at an opponent's face. This offers a deck that is mostly combat focused, some reach. So if there's ever a time where either you get like board wiped or you just can't attack through a bunch of blockers or somebody pillar forted up, this is an alternate way to just close out the game, and that's really nice. Moving on, we have Guardian Scalelord. This is a 5-mana white 3/4 creature dragon with Backup 1 and flying, and whenever this creature attacks, return target non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is this creature's power. So when it enters the battlefield, it gives another creature, ideally flying, and that beautiful attack trigger, where it's just like repeatable reanimation. It's very Sun Titan-esque. Like, Guardian Scalelord is basically doing the same thing as a Sun Titan whenever it's attacking. It returns something mana value X or less. but it can't get lands, notably. Sun Titan can't get lands. This is non-lands. But this can put its ability on another creature when it enters the battlefield, which is very nice too. And if you have any way of increasing the Scale Lord's power, such as with +1/+1 counters maybe, like the theme, you can get bigger things from the graveyard than a Sun Titan can. So this is very nice. Next up, we have Conclave Sledge Captain. This is a 6-mana green 4/4 creature elephant soldier with backup 1, backup 1, backup 1, which I absolutely love. So you can back up to 3 creatures with this ability when it enters the battlefield, and it has trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. It's a really efficient way of putting +1/+1 counters on stuff. What more can you say? This is just really good value, and if you're in a deck that cares about +1/+1 counters and has, multiple creatures on the battlefield that want to be attacking, this card is just such a fantastic top end. Next, we have Mirror Style Master. This is a red 6-mana 3/3 creature human warrior, backup 1, and whenever this creature attacks, for each attacking modified creature you control, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature. Exile those tokens at end of combat. This was a Neon Dynasty Kamigawa keyword ability from last year, and modified just means equipments, auras you control, and counters are modifications. So if your creature has any of those things, if it's equipped, it's enchanted, or has any counters on it, and that's considered modified, and it triggers this ability. Obviously, backup puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature, so that automatically modifies it as well. And this is just a lot of damage, and more enter the battlefield triggers. Obviously, if you back up a creature that has a backup, for example, when that copy of it, attacking copy of it enters the battlefield, that can back something else up, which is very cool. So yeah, this card is sweet. Next, we have another big backup creature. This is Emergent Woodworm. This is a 7-mana green 4/4, pretty small for a 7-drop, 4/4 creature worm with backup 3. Whenever this creature attacks, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is its power. You may put a permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is card advantage and mana advantage, because you get to put it directly onto the battlefield. On a big haymaker that's a 7-drop. It's very expensive, but it is a repeatable effect. The backup ability is 3 instead of 1, so that's 3 counters on something, so it does grow it significantly larger. This is just a no-brainer, great card, top end for the style of deck. And then we have Path of the Pyromancer. This is a new cycle of cards. I don't know if they're all sorceries. I didn't check, but it's a cycle of cards. You see one of these per deck, and they all have something to do with Plane Chase. So Path of the Pyromancer, this is the red of the cycle. It's 5-mana red, sorcery. Discard all cards in your hand. Add 1 red for each card discarded this way. Then draw that many cards +1. So this is kind of like a mini wheel effect for yourself. You're not going up to 7 every single time. You need to have a lot of cards in your hand to really get the value out of it. But this card is like really good for Storm. Like I'm thinking Zada Hedron Grinder, which, will draw like 8 cards or something off an Expedite, and then you'll have like a bunch of lands and you'll need to have more mana. And now you can discard all those like bad cards away, turn that into mana, draw that many cards back, and keep storming off. Vadrik is another Storm commander that's going to really like it. And then it has Will of the Planeswalkers, which is the Plane Chase part of it. Starting with you, each player votes for Planeswalk or Chaos. If Planeswalk gets more votes, Planeswalk. If Chaos gets more votes, or if the vote is tied, Chaos ensues. So for those who don't know, these decks all come with a optional Plane Chase card rule set. So each of them come with 10 Plane Chase cards. 5 of them are new, 5 of them are reprints. And if you have 10 Plane Chase cards per person at the table for the game, so if you have 4 people at a Commander game and you have 40 of these Plane Chase cards, you can play Commander with the Plane Chase optional rules, and it basically allows you to add a little bit more chaos and randomness to your deck, a little bit of spice to the game itself, and it's really fun. I haven't actually gotten a chance to try it. It looks really fun. That's what I wanted to say. It looks really fun. I haven't had a chance to try it in Commander, but I'm super stoked to actually give it a shot. My main takeaway for this is Will of the Planeswalkers, it's good if you're using Plane Chase, but if you're not using Plane Chase rules, this card is still very good in Storm. Like, I would just ignore that text and still run it in like Zada and Vadrik and be very happy about it. Anywho, moving on. We have Uncivil Unrest. This is a 5-mana red enchantment that says non-token creatures you control have Riot, so they enter the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter on it or haste. Again, that's really, really good in this deck because it's all about +1/+1 counters, and as you can see, most of the backup abilities require you attacking, so haste is very good. And if a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. So not only is it giving haste and counters, well, alternatively whichever you need, it's also doubling the amount of damage your creatures that have +1/+1 counters on them deal, and that makes it worth the 5 mana. Like 5 mana for this sort of ability for a fervor effect or a Rhythm of the Wild essentially is a lot, but you're paying 2 extra to basically give your stuff dealing double damage, which is just really good. I mean, it's good. It's really solid. Moving on, we have the next face commander of the next deck. This is the Esper Knights deck. This is Sidar Jabari of Zhalfir. This is a 4-mana Esper commander. It's a 4/3 legendary creature human knight, and it brings back everybody's favorite controversial commander mechanic, Eminence, which means whenever you attack with one or more knights, if Sidar Jabari of Zhalfir is in the command zone or on the battlefield, draw a card, then discard a card. The reason it's controversial is you got this ability even if Sidar Jabari is not on the battlefield. If it's not on the battlefield, it still gets to do something and you can never interact with it. I've always been of the opinion that Eminence is kind of feels like a fundamental design philosophy mistake. Like, I don't like things that can't be interacted with, period. Never been a fan of that. I don't think Eminence is inherently broken in terms of being too powerful, though. I think there are some Eminence commanders that are just fine, and I think Sidar Jabari's Eminence ability is actually just fine. Like, you need to be attacking with knights, and you can interact with it with this ability in a sense, because if you just make sure they can't attack with knights, then they can't really do anything with this Eminence ability. So it is interactable in an indirect way, and I think it's absolutely fine. I don't like commanders that get to do something without ever being cast. That's a separate issue, but I think power level wise, this is absolutely fine. But it has more text, which is nice. Flying First Strike, and whenever Sidar Jabari deals combat damage to a player, return target knight creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And the combat ability is actually the main power of Sidar. Being able to loot passively from the command zone, even whenever your knights are attacking, that's really good. It makes drawing, it makes reanimation really good, and it plays very well into his powerhouse ability, his payoff ability of whenever he deals combat damage, you just take a knight creature card that maybe you looted away, maybe you sacrificed, maybe you self-milled. You just put it from the graveyard to the battlefield. So it's card advantage and mana advantage, and it's recursion, obviously. It's just very, very solid. Slap some double strike on this, and you're really having a fun time. So Sidar is going to be, in my opinion, the best knight commander. Like, if you want to build a knight deck, you're probably going to be drawn towards Sidar Jabari out of all the options there. I said the only other option before was an Orzhov Commander Ariel or something like that from a previous Dominaria set, and I was wrong. People pointed out that in Mardu we had Sir Gwyn, but I actually never considered Sir Gwyn like a knight commander. It always felt, or at least seemed like every single Sir Gwyn deck that I've ever come across and is built optimally is always like an equipment deck that happens to run like just a handful of knights, like anything that deals with equipment. So like Pure Steel Paladin's there and it's a knight, but it's like only there because it's really good with equipment, not because it's really good as a knight. You know what I mean? So I kind of ignored Sir Gwyn, but yeah, shout out. If you want to be Mardu Knights, you go with Sir Gwyn. But I think Sidar Jabari actually gives you a payoff for running knights over anything else. And some notable reprints, we got Hakan Stromgalt Surge, which is probably the best thing you could ever loot away with Sidar. If it's in your graveyard, you can cast it, and then you can suddenly cast basically every single knight from your graveyard outside of just like getting it back with Sidar. And then cards like Hero Bladehold is a super powerful or expensive reprint, powerful reprint and expensive reprint. It's just a great knight that goes wide for your table. And then it has cool reprints like Knight's Charge, which adds a little bit of extra reach to your knight's strategy, and also if you are going late game enough, you can pay 8 mana and just reanimate all the knights from your graveyard. It's super fun. As for the new cards, though, we have Exsanguinator Cavalry. This is a black 3 mana, 2/3 creature vampire knight with menace and lifelink. And whenever a knight you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature and create a blood token. So the payoff here, you get +1/+1 counters and create a blood token. These things, +1/+1 counters is not like a major theme of the Knight deck, but, growing things still is really good, especially if they have lifelink already, because you gain even more life out of it. And creating blood tokens, while that's like a very vampire thing, it's really good in Sidar because this deck is all about drawing cards, discarding stuff, and then reanimating stuff. So drawing cards matters is a major theme of this deck. There's a lot of things that pay off for drawing lots of cards, and there's a lot of payoff for discarding stuff so you can then reanimate them afterwards. So blood tokens are actually fantastic in this deck. And we also have Herald of Hoofbeats. This is a 4 mana blue 3/3 creature human knight, and it brings back horsemanship to Magic the Gathering, something that you don't see very often. It's a very old school mechanic that I think showed up only Portal 3 Kingdoms or something like that. Some set that wasn't really widely circulated and was basically the set's equivalent to not having flying. I believe that's the case. I think the set didn't have flying, so they wanted to add flying without actually make flying creatures, and they did that with horsemanship. It just works exact same way, except there's no it can't be blocked with reach or anything. But yeah, that's the idea of it. Anyway, it has horsemanship, and other knights you control have horsemanship, so this gives your board basically unblockable. It's a fancy way of saying unblock, a more flavorful way of saying unblockable. Because, like I said, horsemanship, nobody plays horsemanship. There's not a lot of horsemanship cards. So what are the odds somebody else, your defending player, has horsemanship? It's some to none. So this card is just very cool. And we have a Merfolk Knight. This is Vodalian Wave Knight. It's a Azorius, 4 mana, 3/3 creature Merfolk Knight. And whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on each other Merfolk and or Knight you control. So this is going to even fit in a Merfolk deck, but in the Knight deck, it's really nice because this deck is all about looting, and every single time you're looting, you're putting counters on stuff, you're growing your board. Card draw matters, Knights matter, this is all great. And next we have Lochwain Lancer. This is a 5 mana black, 5/5 creature human knight, menace. Whenever a non-token knight you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you draw a card. So this is nice insurance for your board. If you ever get board wiped, you get to draw a bunch of cards and it will help you rebuild. If you have any sort of sacrifice theme going on in the deck, you can sacrifice knights strategically to draw cards, or for sacrifice them for value while also drawing more value. So that's always good. Next, we have Elenda and Azor. This is a new Esper commander, and this could be the replacement commander of the face commander, Sidar Jabari. 6 mana, Esper, 6/6, legendary creature, vampire knight, Sphinx, flying ward 2. Whenever Elenda and Azor attacks, you may pay X, black, white, and blue. If you do, you draw X cards. So that's a callback to the previous Azor card. And then at the beginning of each end step, you may pay 4 life. If you do, create a number of 1/1 black vampire knight creature tokens with lifelink equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. So that's the callback to Elenda's previous ability. So overall, I'm not super hot on this card, to be honest, but I think the end step trigger is where a lot of its power lies. Drawing a lot of cards in this deck is very easy, and paying 4 life to mana efficiently flood the board with lifelink creatures is just really good. It has flying, it's 6/6, it's ward 2, so it's hard to deal with. And if you are late game, or if you're just out of cards, basically if you're out of cards, you can attack and then draw some cards, and that plays into its end step trigger as well. So it's a great way to refill if it's late in the game to kind of win the attrition war, and it's a great way at all times to just, end step poop out a huge army of tokens constantly. Next, we have the Path of the deck. This is Path of the Enigma. It's a 5 mana blue sorcery. Target player draws 4 cards. So for 5 mana, you just draw 4 cards. Very nice. Will of the Planeswalkers, starting with you. Each player votes for Planeswalker Chaos. If Planeswalk gets the most votes, Planeswalk. If Chaos gets the most votes or is tied, Chaos ensues. Next, we have Chivalric Alliance. This is a 2-mana white enchantment that says whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card, and pay 2 mana, discard a card. You can create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. So the activate ability can help the triggered ability. The main power is in the triggered ability. Basically, in an ideal sense, if you're attacking with creatures every single turn and your deck's doing its thing, it's a 2-mana Phyrexian Arena in white, which is totally reasonable, and it has further upside where you can discard cards you don't need, or you can discard cards like knight cards that you want to reanimate with your commander, which is extra sweet, and you're also making a knight out of it at the same time, which is sweet. These cards are just very good in this deck. And I think this is the last card for the deck. This is Conjurer's Mantle. This is a 2-mana white artifact equipment. And it says, equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has vigilance. And whenever a equipped creature attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a card that shares a creature type with that creature from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order and has equipped 1. So in a deck that is very focused on creatures, like knights or whatever tribal deck, if you have like 30 plus of these, you're taking 6 each time you're attacking. That's really good odds to actually hit something and constantly draw a card each turn. And the equipment itself is pumping up the creature a little bit. +1/+1 is okay, but vigilance is very nice. If you have like a big beater, giving it vigilance means you're not going to be hit on the crackback that easily. So that's really nice. It's incremental card draw, very efficient in tribal decks. So I like it. It's good. All right, moving on to the next commander deck. This is Castle of the Broken Halo. This is the face commander for a Jeskai Convoke deck, which is I think the first time they've done like a Convoke precon, I think. So this is very cool. It's a 6-mana Jeskai 5/4 legendary creature, angel ally with Convoke, and that means your creatures can help cast a spell. Each creature you tap while casting this spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's colors. So for example, for Kazla, you can convoke her out for free for 0 mana if you have 6 creatures. One of them is blue, one of them is red, and one of them is white minimum. You can tap all of them for a blue, red, white, and then 3 more whatever colors to cast her for free, which is very cool. And she has flying, vigilance, and haste. And whenever you cast another spell that has Convoke, scry 2, then draw a card. So there's your payoff. Whenever casting a Convoke spell, whenever you do the thing, you get to draw a card. That's kind of like how it goes with commanders with more niche archetypes. You do the thing, you draw a card. That's how the deck functions. And she herself is also a really good pressure in the air. Flying, vigilance, haste is just really good on a 5/4 body. So she's hitting things, she's defending you, and she's drawing you cards. Those are all the things you want to be doing in a Convoke deck. It's kind of boring, but it's also what you need. So I'll take it. As for notable reprints that are kind of showing you what the deck wants to do, obviously Convoke decks, the more creatures you have on the battlefield, the easier it is to cheat things out mana-wise at the very least. So stuff like Kaikar, Wind's Fury, and Locust God are going to poop out a lot of tokens very efficiently, and then you can use those tokens to cast your spells for very cheap. And Our Reckoning is an example of a Convoke spell that works really well with tokens. It's going to kill everything but your sweet, sweet tokens in the end. And then you can use those tokens to tap them and convoke out Kazla once more from the command zone. So that's always nice. Now, as for the new cards, we have Mist Meadow Vanisher, which I am super stoked with because Lorwyn is one of my favorite planes, and we have very, very precious few glimpses of Lorwyn these days. This is a 2 and a hybrid color, white or blue, for a 3/2 creature Kifkin Wizard that says, whenever Mist Meadow Vanisher becomes tapped, exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this is a callback to Mist Meadow Witch, which I really like, but it also promotes convoking things. Tapping this outside of combat is a 3/2, so it's not going to attack very well. It doesn't really have evasion, but if you're tapping this convoke stuff, you get a really powerful ability. You get to blink something or removes a potential blocker from your path. Or even if somebody's attacking you, for example, and you have a way to tap Mist Meadow Vanisher at instant speed, you can just exile something and blank with potential attacker as well. So this works with blink strategies, ETB abuse, leave the battlefield abuse, getting rid of potential blockers, getting rid of potential attackers, and it works with Convoke, which is kind of the theme of the deck. I like it a lot. Next, we have the secondary commander. This can be replaced as the lead commander of the deck, and this one is actually quite good. This is Saint Traft and Rem Karalos. It's Jeskai with 3 mana instead of like 6, and it's a 3/4 legendary creature, Spirit Human, and it says whenever it becomes tapped, you create a 1/1 red human creature token. If this is the first time this ability has resolved, if it's the second time it's resolved, you make a 1/1 blue spirit token with flying, and if it's a third time, you create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. And whenever you cast a spell that has Convoke, you untap Saint Traft and Rem Karalos. So, if you tap this creature to convoke out a spell, boom, you make a human creature token. And then when you cast that spell with Convoke, boom, you untap Saint Traft. And then you cast another Convoke spell, you make a 1/1 spirit, and you untap Saint Traft. And then you cast another Convoke spell, you make an angel creature token. I think this card is really sweet. It's a very cool and on-theme way of making tokens. I don't think it's particularly super strong or anything, but it's obviously a staple in Convoke decks, but I don't think it beats out Kazla as leading a Convoke deck, just because that card draw in Scrying 2 is just so solid, and while it does cost half the mana value to just play it out, which is really nice, Kazla also has a mana discount in terms of you can convoke around, so I think that kind of balances each other out. I don't know. This one's really good. I wouldn't say no to putting this as the face card of the deck, but just drawing cards it's very good, you guys. It's just very good. But they're both very good. They're both very cool cards. I like them a lot. Next, we have Wildfire Awakener. This is a Boros card. It's X1 red and white for a 3/2 creature human wizard with Convoke, and whenever it enters the battlefield, create X1/1 red elemental creature tokens with whenever this creature becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to target player. So again, this is what Convoke needs. Convoke is like a very niche archetype that never really had that much support. I don't think it was ever like a thing that was kind of supported. You have like some cards in like Theros and stuff that like is inspired, so if you untap them, you get a little value. But like, this is not a lot of Convoke support is what I'm trying to say. There's like a little bit in Shadowmoor, I think. Shadowmoor Eventide. But anyway, there's not a lot of Convoke support, so these cards have to be really good, really powerful, and kind of fill in the holes for the archetype. And Wildfire Awakener definitely does that. If you have a lot of creatures, you get to make a lot more creatures, and then the fact that those creatures themselves, the tokens themselves, are not just 1/1s with haste or whatever. They're like way better in this deck because when you tap them, you get to deal extra damage, so you get to keep convoking stuff. This card is like really good. This card's really cool. I like it a lot. Next, we have Nesting Dovehawk. This is a 4-mana white 2/2 creature bird with flying, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, populate. So you create a token that's a copy of a creature token you control, and whenever a creature token enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Nesting Dovehawk. So it's a big threat. It's like a big ever-growing threat that also makes a token every single combat. This is just really good in the deck. Populate is not like super like busted in this deck in particular. You really want to have bigger tokens to populate because the bigger the token, the more impressive copying it is. And most of the tokens here are like 1/1s and 2/2s, so that's like not super impressive to populate them. But you know, you could make a 4/4 angel with Saint Traft and Rem, so I take that back, I guess. But yeah, it also grows into a super big threat, and both of these abilities are like super niche, but they're also very good in this deck. So yeah, that's a recurring thing with these new cards. Moving on. We have Flock Chaser Phantom. This is a 6-mana Azorius 5/5 creature spirit with Convoke and flying, vigilance, and whenever it attacks, the next spell you cast this turn has Convoke. So not only are basically like all these new cards Convoke spells, because again, like Convoke just needs the help. We don't have a lot of Convoke spells, but it also turns the other spells, the non-Convoke spells in your deck, into Convoke spells, which you can then draw cards off of and tap your creatures to mana discount off of, which is just really good. This is exactly what the deck needs. It's really cool. And then we have Path of the Ghost Hunter. This is X 1 and a white for a sorcery that says create X 1/1 white spear creature tokens with flying, and then has Will of the Planeswalkers. So yeah, it does what the deck wants to be doing. It wants to make, you know, a bunch of creatures, because then the more creatures you have, the more stuff you can convoke out, and then has Will of the Planeswalkers, which is exactly what you want to be doing if you're plane chasing, I guess. Sweet. And then we have a really cool card. I like this card a lot. This is Wand of the World Soul. This is a 3-mana mana rock, but it has a cool twist to it. It's 2 and a white for an artifact that says it enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it to add 1 white, and the next spell you cast this turn has Convoke. And that second ability, being able to turn spells into Convokes, is just really cool. Like, that's just, I think this card is going to be really good in like basically any go wide deck, because if you're going wide, if you're popping off, if you have like 5 or so tokens on the battlefield, just turning everything into Convoke spells is just like going to make sure the mana discount is off the chain. Like, this is going to be super cool in like Torrents, for example, I think. I don't know. This card is sick. I like it a lot. This is probably my favorite card of the Precon right now. Yeah, that's cool. And then we have Deluxe Dragster. So we have a vehicle in the deck. This is a 5-mana blue 4/3 artifact vehicle. It says it can't be blocked except by vehicles. Okay. And then whenever Deluxe Dragster deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell will be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. So, and it has crew, so you have to tap down creatures to crew it, so that's on theme with the deck as well. That's cool. It's just incremental card advantage. It depends on what, obviously what your opponents have in their decks, but you can do things that your deck just can't really do, or you can find that clutch removal spell or card draw spell or whatever you need, somebody's rampant growth or whatever, and it can't really be blocked profitably too, so this card is really nice. I can see play outside of just this deck as well. All right, we come to the final precon, the 5th one of the bunch. This is Gimbal Gremlin Prodigy. This is a 5-mana teamer, 4/4 legendary creature, Gremlin Artificer, and it deals with artifacts. Artifact creatures you control have trample, and at the beginning of your end step, create a 0/0 red Gremlin artifact creature token. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is a number of differently named artifact tokens you control. So if you have, for example, a food token and a treasure token, these are both artifact tokens with different names on them. At the beginning of your end step, you're going to make a 0/0 red Gremlin artifact creature token. Then you're going to put 3 +1/+1 counters on it, because you control a Gremlin artifact creature token, a food creature token, and a treasure creature token. And obviously, if you have more types of creature tokens, then you're going to make bigger gremlins, which is super fun. And they also have trample as long as Gimbal is on the battlefield. So this is Teamer Artifact, but with a focus on differently named artifact tokens, which is very unique and very cool. We don't really see artifact tribal or artifact commanders in Teamer. So, and as for like notable reprints that I saw, there's Tireless Tracker, which is creeping up in value. It's always a great card. There's my favorite red card of all time. I've been harping about it for eternity. Curse of Opulence. It makes gold tokens. Tireless Tracker makes clue tokens. And then Academy Manufacturer, which obviously is just going to be freaking amazing in this deck. Whenever you're making a clue or a food or a treasure, you make all 3 instead, and that's going to work perfectly with Gimbal as well. Now, as for the new cards, we have Hedron Detonator, which is a 3-mana red 2/3 creature Goblin Artificer, and it says whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, Hedron Detonator deals 1 damage to target opponent. You can tap it, sacrifice 2 artifacts, and exile a top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of artifact tokens on the battlefield that you can sacrifice for value. So whenever you need more card advantage, you can just activate its ability. But just passively, this is kind of like a Reckless Fireweaver number 3 or so in your deck, where you're pinging your opponents to death. It's like, and it's an actual finisher in your deck as well. I think this card is also going to be pretty gas in like decks like Prosper, for example. Imagine sacrificing 2 treasure tokens and then exiling the top card of your library. When you play that card, you make another treasure token. So it kind of feeds itself very well with Prosper as well. So yeah, this card's very good. Moving on, we have Pain Distributor. This is a red 3-mana 2/3 creature Devil Citizen with Menace, and whenever a player casts their first spell each turn, they create a treasure token. Whenever an artifact an opponent controls is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, Pain Distributor deals 1 damage to that player. So this is kind of group hug and group slug rolled together. It's giving everybody basically a treasure token on their turn. However, when your opponents are popping treasure tokens or whatever other artifacts are dying, they're going to take damage. So you're helping everybody, you're giving them free mana, but you're also helping them hurt themselves with Pain Distributor as well. I don't really like this card too much. I don't like giving my opponents mana. If it was pinging for more than 1, I would be more stoked about this, but I don't know. Dealing just 1 damage, I guess it's good against artifact dice or something, but I'd rather just Vandal Blast them. I don't know. I don't like this one too much, but I don't know. Could be wrong here. Moving on though, we have Cutthroat Negotiator. This is a 4-mana Izzet 4/3 creature orc pirate. We'd love to see it. Orcs back in action. It has Parlay, which is very thematic for for pirates. Whenever Cutthroat Negotiator attacks, each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, you create a tapped treasure token. Then each player draws a card. So you're helping everybody draw a card, but you're going to get a bunch of treasures, hopefully, in the process. I like this card a lot more than the previous one. It's kind of group huggy. The only downside is it has no form of evasion. So 4/3 is not always going to be able to get in there. You're going to need some sort of evasion for this card to actually do some serious work consistently. But if you can do it consistently, then it's pretty good. I think it's going to be better in a pirate deck because pirates usually have other means of evasion because a lot of their triggers happen off attacking or dealing combat damage and stuff. So we'll see how good this card is in the precon, but I think it's going to be even better in pirate decks. Moving on, we have the alternate commander in the deck. This is Rashmi and Ragavan. This is Temur, 4-mana, 2/4, legendary creature, elf, monkey, and whenever you cast your first spell during each of your turns, exile the top card of a target opponent's library and create a treasure token. Then you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost if it's a spell with mana value less than the number of artifacts you control. If you don't cast it this way, you may cast it this turn. So basically, this card, every single one of your turns, you're going to steal a card and you're going to make a treasure token. So you're up card advantage, you're up mana advantage. You get to cast the exiled card for free, so even more mana advantage if its mana value is less than the number of artifacts you control. But even if it's higher mana value, you can still just pay mana to cast it, and you have treasures now, so you can help pay for the cost if it's a different color, like if it's like white or black, for example, you have treasures to help cast them anyway. The only downside here is I don't think you can play lands off this. It says that you may cast the exiled card. So if you hit a land off this with Rashmi's ability, you're out of luck. You just get a treasure token, which is not really good. Kind of a bummer that you can't play lands, but it's kind of cool, I guess. I don't think people are going to be super scared of Rashmi and Ragavan. I think they're going to be more scared of the fact that you're in Temur because, you're in Simic. So that's a little bit spooky. But if you want to be like trying to throw off the radar from you, I think this is one that will do it pretty well while still accruing some decent value for you. Next, we have Sandstep War Riders. This is a 4-mana green 4/4 creature human warrior with trample, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, bolster X, where X is the number of differently named artifact tokens you control. So it kind of reinforces the theme of the deck, differently named artifact tokens, and the payoff is, your stuff gets big. And this is a 4/4 trampler too, so that's nice. It's cool, I guess, if you like hitting things. I like hitting things. What am I saying? I like hitting things. This is cool. Moving on. We have Schema Thief. This is a 4-mana, blue, 3/3 creature, Vidalcan Rogue Artificer with flying, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a token that's a copy of target artifact that player controls. So, the nice Soul Ring you have there, now I have a Soul Ring as well. Nice Panharmonicon, I have a Panharmonicon as well. This card is just really nice. It doesn't steal things, so it's less of a feels bad, but you make tokens of them, and hey, if you make a token, artifact token of a freaking Soul Ring, that's going to grow your main commander. It's a differently named artifact token suddenly. So this really fuels the main theme of the deck, which is differently named artifact tokens. This is incredibly niche, but outside of that incredible niche thing is just good value. Like just making artifact permanents tokens for free each time you're attacking is just good. It's a good card. Moving on, we have Path of the Animus. This is a 4-mana green sorcery that says search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So this is straight up explosive vegetation with Will of the Planeswalkers. That's good. Like, if you're playing Plane Chase, this card is good because you have explosive vegetation with Will of the Planeswalkers, and Will of the Planeswalkers is really nice to have. Outside of it, you probably want to replace it. I would say that was a common theme in these paths, but I think the red one is just very good for Storm, but that's like an outlier. But most of these are like, they're kind of like baseline okay spells, and they become much more playable, much more desirable if you're doing Will of Planeswalkers. Next, we have Dance with Calamity, and this is a cool one. This is 8 mana for a red sorcery that says shuffle your library as many times as you choose. You may exile the top card of your library. If the total mana value of those cards exiled this way is 13 or less, you may cast any number of the spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. So this is like playing 21. Like you exile the top card of your library, and it's 4-drop or something, and then you're like, hit me. And then you get like a 3 drops, and there you're at 7 total, and you're like, hit me. And you keep going, and you try to get as many cards as possible exiled under 13, because if you go above 13, this card does basically 8 mana do nothing, which is bad. but yeah, this card, I don't think this card's good, but it's very funny. And I personally want to play it. It's cute. I like it. And that's it for all the new cards featured in the pre-constructed decks. There's also set booster exclusives, but this video is going so long and it's getting kind of late here. I decided I'm going to be doing the set booster exclusive cards in a separate video that are going to go up tomorrow. So check that out. Like and subscribe if you like this sort of content. And if you want to see the set booster video, it's going to be going up tomorrow. So like and subscribe and ring the dingle dingle. Ring the dingle dingle. And you'll be notified, hopefully, when that video comes out. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of sweet stuff there as well. All right, everybody, I'm super tired. Good night, have fun, GG's, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.